Students, welcome to the online study. We will see the explanation of lesson number 4, The Rat Trap, written by Selma Lagerlof. Now, let us see the theme of this lesson. In this story, the author convey a definite and universal theme. The story has a universal appeal that the essential goodness in a human being never dies. It can be awakened through understanding and love. Here in this story, the author speaks about or mentions about a peddler, a tramp, who is fallen into temptation and committed a crime. However, the generosity and the kindness of a young woman made him to correct his error, mistake, and amend his ways. Let's have the explanation now. Once there was a man who went around selling small rat traps. This man is called a tramp, a peddler, or a vagabond. These three are the same. So this is a man who does not have any permanent shelter or roof. He would roam around city to city. He would roam around many places selling the rat traps which he had made from the wires. And this business of selling rat traps is not a profitable one. That means he cannot earn the sufficient amount of money by this business. So he had to beg and steal a bit to keep himself alive, since he does not have home, since he does not have any permanent job or good salary, since the business of selling rat traps would not provide him any sufficient money. So what he did, sometimes he begged or steal the things so that he could survive, he could make himself alive. His clothes were in rags, his cheeks were sunken, and hunger could be noticed in his eyes. His life was sad and monotonous. He had no company. This would be the life of a vagabond. This would be a life who does not have a family, a permanent house, or a permanent place to live in. He would roam around. The appearance is very clearly described here. His appearance, he wore dirty, unkempt clothes. His cheeks were sunken, and hunger could be noticed in his eyes. He suffered lack, poverty, and nothing to eat. His life was sad and monotonous. A kind of life that he is living is sad, monotonous. He had no company. He had no friends. No one who could hang around him. No one who could accompany him. He lived alone. One day, he was struck by an idea that the whole world was nothing but a big rat trap. Now one day he was selling the rat traps. Meanwhile, a line of thought came into his mind that the world is just like a rat trap. The whole world is nothing but a big rat trap. It set baits for people by offering riches and joy, shelter and food, heat and clothing, exactly as the rat trap offer cheese and pork. Now he says that how the world can be compared to a rat trap. He says that all the things found in the world, such as riches, that means money, joy, the things that provides us joy, shelter and food, heat and clothing, and all these things in the world are just like bait, which attracts mankind, which attract human, and finally when he is attracted, he get into the trap, and forever he is trapped. Just like the way a rat trap is used to catch rats, it offers cheese and pork as its bait. As soon as anyone let himself be tempted to touch the bait, the rat trap closed in on him, and then everything come to an end. This is his mentality, this is his perception regarding the world, that this world is just like a rat trap that offers many attractive things by which we fall into the temptation and commit any crime, commit any illegal thing that entraps us forever, and thus our end is assured. This is the perception of the peddler. This is the line of thought that struck him. Meanwhile, he was selling his rat traps. He had been to many places. He had seen many people being tempted and enticed by the baits of the world, by the things of the world, and they have been entrapped. While he had seen some people who are still moving around the trap, looking and being attracted by the bait, and they are waiting for their chance to enter into the trap and taste that bait, touch that bait. So someone who is already been entrapped and someone who are still waiting for that chance, still moving around the rat trap in order to get the bait, in order to be attracted and tempted by the bait. One dark evening, he was walking slowly with heavy steps when he saw a little grey cottage by the roadside. He knocked at the door to ask shelter for that night. The owner was an old man. He had no wife or children. He was happy to get someone to talk to him in his loneliness. He served him porridge for the supper, gave him tobacco for his pipe, and they began to talk with each other. Now, this is what happens when the evening fall. He was going through a city, but there was no place for him to stay. So he came across a cottage nearby the road, and he knocked at the door. In order to get permission to stay in that cottage for that night. In this cottage lived a crofter, an old man. The crofter had no wife, no children. He lived alone. When he saw this peddler, this tramp in front of his door, he was happy to receive him because he was suffering from loneliness. There was no one whom he could share the things of his heart. As a result of which he became so happy and entertained this peddler in his house. He had given him porridge, he had given him tobacco. Moreover, after the supper, after the dinner, both of them, they played cards. Meanwhile, they were playing this crofter. He says that previously he had worked in an iron mill in Ramsjo Iron Works. Now he has become old and no longer able to work. That's why he had brought cows. Now the source of income are those cows. He would take the milk from this cow and sell them in the market. This is how he earn. This is how he make money. So he tells that last month he sold the milk of the cow and earned 30 kroners. Now kroners are the denomination of money. So he said to the peddler that he had earned 30 kroners last month. But it seemed to him that the peddler is reluctant to believe. He is not accepting this fact that the crofter had earned 30 kroners by selling the milk alone. So, in order to prove his statement, in order to prove what he has told, he stood up, he go to the window, and there on the window there was a bag, leather bag that was hung on a nail. He took that bag, he came in front of the peddler, he opened the bag, took the 30 kroners and showed the peddler the 30 kroners and said, "This is what I have earned. See, you have not believed it, but I have proved it. See these 30 kroners that I have earned by selling the milk of the cow." Now that's the matter is over. There the matter is over. Now when they had gone for sleep, both of them, they had gone for sleep, and in the morning, peddler and the crofter, both of them, they get up. The peddler moved on his way, the crofter moved on his way. And after half an hour, the crofter returned back to the house. After half an hour, he came back. The peddler came back to the house. He stood in front of that house. He broke the window pane, stuck in his hand, and got hold of the pouch with the 30 kroners. After half an hour, the peddler come back to the home, broke the window pane, put his hands inside, take the bag, and he took the 30 kroners and thrust them in his pocket. Then again he put back that bag on the nail. Then he hung the leather bag very carefully back in its place and went away. This is something happened. As I told you that this peddler, apart from selling rat traps, he would beg and steal things in order to make his survival, in order to make himself alive. So he came back and stolen the 30 kroners from this crofter's house. He felt pleased with his smartness. Now what? After committing crime, after stealing the money of the crofter, he felt pleased with his smartness. It's very easy. He obtained the money easily. Then he realized that he dare not to continue on the public highway. After stealing, a fear gripped him that made him not to continue on the highway, lest he would be arrested by the police, he would be caught by the police. So he took to the woods, he took the path through the woods, through the jungle. He got into a big and confusing forest. He kept on walking without coming to the end of the forest. He realized that he had only been walking around in the same part of the forest. He thought that he had let himself be fooled by a bait and had been caught. The whole forest seemed to him like an impenetrable prison from which he could never escape. After stealing the money of this crofter, he did not take the public highway. Instead, he took the path through the woods, through the forest, due to fear of being caught. But when he walked and walked and walked, he discovered that he was walking on the same place. He got confused. He got stuck in the forest. And he could not find way out of the forest. This was how he was stuck in the forest. And on that time, he realized that how he was being tempted by the 30 kroners of this crofter. This leather pouch, this bag acted like a bait. He had indeed fallen into temptation, and now he is entrapped in the forest. It seemed to him that it is just like an impenetrable prison from which he could never ever escape. It was late in December. Now this is the thing that happened to him in the month of December. Darkness increased the danger, as also his gloom and despair. As the darkness increased, his gloom, his disappointment, his despair also increased. He sank down on the ground as he was quite tired. He was tired by walking in the forest, finding the way, but he failed. He was quite tired. Then he knelt down. He bent down on the ground. During that moment, he heard the sound of hammer strokes. At that moment, when he was tired, exhausted, and bent down on the ground, he heard the hammer strokes. He summoned all his strength, got up, and staggered in the direction of that sound. He reached a fort where the master smith and his helper sat near the furnace, waiting for the pig iron to be ready to put on the anvil. Now he reached to an iron mill. And he saw the master smith and the helper as they were waiting in front of the furnace for the pig iron to be ready to put on the anvil. There were many sounds. Now, since this is an iron mill, there were many sounds coming from there. Sounds of big bellows groaned, burning coal cracked, hammer strokes, clattering sound, and all this type of sound could be heard coming from this iron mill. On account of all those noises, the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the iron mill until the stranger stood up close to the furnace. In the midst of this commotion, in the midst of this clamor and clattering sound, the blacksmith, he could not notice that someone has entered into his iron mill until he stood up near by the furnace. The blacksmith glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder. With a long beard, dirty, ragged clothes, and rat traps hanging on his chest, the peddler, it was none other than the peddler. It was the peddler. The peddler asked for permission to stay in that iron mill. The master blacksmith nodded a hearty consent. Without saying a word, he nodded. He given permission. Just then, the ironmaster who owned the Ramsjo iron mill came into the mill. It was his routine to visit the mill in order to inspect the work. Since they were given some consignment to produce the best iron and manufacture the best iron in the market, so this iron master or the owner of this iron work, he comes to visit there. The iron master saw that a person in dirty clothes had moved so close to the furnace that steam was rising from his wet rags. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully. Then he tore off his hat, which had a wide flexible brim. To get a better view of his face, he called him Neil Olof and wondered how he looked. Now this owner of ironworks, he come to visit and inspect the work that is carried out there. Meanwhile, he saw the peddler sleeping on a piece of iron, who had put his hat upon his face. When he lifted up his hat, he recognized that it is his old comrade, regimental friend, Neil Olof. And he wondered at his appearance, how dirty and unkempt he was. This peddler had never seen this iron master of Ramsjo and did not even know what his name was. He thought that the iron master might perhaps throw his old acquaintance a couple to kroner. So he did not tell him that he was mistaken. Now, important thing happened here, that iron master mistaken him to be his old regimental friend. But when he interacted with this peddler also tried to conceal his identity. He did not deny that he is not his friend, or he was mistaken, hoping to get some kroners. The ironmaster observed that he should not have resigned from the regiment. Then he asked the stranger to come home with him. The tramp did not agree. He thought of 30 kroners. Going up to the manor house would be like throwing himself into the lion's den. Now this ironmaster, or the owner of these ironworks, he says that this peddler, he should have not resigned from the regiment. That is why he is now in this situation. That is how he had to suffer all these things, because he resigned from his regiment. Now this ironmaster, he invites the peddler, whom he mistakenly thought to be his old regimental friend and captain. But this peddler, he was afraid. Why? He denied, he refused his invitation. He did not go with that man to the house because he was afraid, because of that 30 kroners, because he had stolen the money. He did not dare to go with the iron master. So he thought that going with this man to his house is just like throwing himself into the lion's den. That means going with this man, this iron master, seems to be very dangerous for the peddler. The iron master assumed that he felt embarrassed because of his miserable clothing. He said to his wife, the ironmaster, he thought that this peddler is refusing his invitation to come to his house. It might be because he is feeling embarrassed because of his miserable and unkempt clothing. He says to the peddler that his wife Elizabeth is dead, his boys were abroad, and only his oldest daughter was with him. So there is no need of hesitation. So there is no need of being embarrassed, since no one in the house except the ironmaster's oldest daughter. The ironmaster told the blacksmith that Captain Von Stale preferred to stay with him that night. He laughed to himself, went away. When the peddler refused the invitation, he asked, or the ironmaster told the blacksmith that Captain Von Stale would prefer to stay with you that night. He laughed to himself and went back home. Half an hour later, the sound of carriage wheels were heard outside the iron mill. The ironmaster's daughter came there, followed by a valet carrying a big fur coat. She introduced herself as Edla Wilmanson. She noticed that the man was afraid. She thought that either he had stolen something or else he had escaped from the jail. Now, the daughter of the ironmaster, she come to the iron mill, and when she looked at this peddler, he was afraid. On looking at the peddler, she thought that this man could have stolen something, or else this man could have escaped from the jail. She addressed him as captain and requested him to stay with them over Christmas Eve. Now, the appearance of man seems like that he is escaped from the jail or would have stolen anything. However, the ironmaster would have told Edla Wilmanson about Captain Vaughn's tale, his old regimental friend who is staying on that night in the iron mill. So as a result of which she had come to invite to take this peddler to her home. She assured him that he would be allowed to leave them just as freely as he had come. Now, a kind of assurance is given by Edla Wilmanson. Looking at the fearful face of this peddler, she tells that the way you are coming into the house, you will be free to move out of the house. Now, after convincing this peddler, she said this in such a friendly manner that the Rattrap peddler agreed to go with her. She convinced her finally, and the Rattrap peddler, he agreed to go with Edla Wilmanson to the house of the ironmaster. The next day was the Christmas Eve. The ironmaster came into the dining room for breakfast. He thought of his old regimental comrade whom he had met so unexpectedly. He felt satisfied and talked of feeding him well and giving him some honorable job. His daughter remarked that last night when she saw him, she did not notice anything about him to show that once he had been an educated and civilized man. The ironmaster asked her to have patience and let him get cleaned up and dressed up. Then she would see something different. The tramp's manner would fall away from him with the tramp clothes. Now the father and his daughter, both of them, they are talking about the tramp whom they have brought the last night. The ironmaster, he is feeling happy to meet his old comrade, old regimental friend, and he says to his daughter that we should provide good food to him. We should also look for him any job so that he may not wonder about selling the rat traps. But Edla Wilmanson, she expressed her doubt. She says that last night when she saw him, she was not able to see any sign of being an educated and civilized man on this tramp. At this, the father, the ironmaster, he says that let him be cleaned and let his clothes, let him be dressed up. Then you will see something different in him. Just then, a stranger entered in a good-looking suit of clothes, a white shirt with a starched collar and whole shoes. Meanwhile, this Edla and her father, both of them, they were talking about the stranger or the tramp. A stranger entered into the room. Now he was wearing a coat, white shirt, starched collar and shoes. They both of them. They were not able to recognize this man. They were not able to understand this man. Although he was well groomed, the ironmaster did not seem pleased. The ironmaster did not seem pleased. He was not able to recognize him. He realized that he had made a mistake last night. Now, why he was not pleased? Because he realized his error, his mistake last night. Now, in the broad daylight, it was not impossible to mistake him for an old acquaintance. It was in the last night when, in the dark and the dim atmosphere inside the iron mill, he mistaken this tramp to be his old regimental friend. But this is the morning, the broad daylight, so there is no chance of being mistaken. So he understood that he mistakenly had invited and brought a stranger into their home. The stranger made no attempt to dissemble. He explained that it was not his fault. He had never pretended to be anything but a poor trader. A manner of explanation is given by the tramp. He says that he never pretended to be anyone. He was a poor trader, but it's not his fault. It's the fault of the ironmaster and his daughter. He had requested the ironmaster to let him stay in the iron mill. He also says that he made a request in that last night so that he could stay in the iron mill. But the ironmaster and his daughter kept on insisting him to come to their house. He was ready to put on his rags and go away. Now he says that he's ready to go away since he is not the acquaintance or the old regimental friend of the ironmaster. He is ready to go back. He is ready to put on his filthy and dirty clothes again. The ironmaster thought that it was not honest on the part of the man and wanted to call the sheriff. The tramp then told the ironmaster that the whole thing was nothing but a rat trap. But the ironmaster is displeased. He is angry with the tramp. It's because he concealed his identity. He did not reveal his identity, that he is not the person whom the ironmaster knows. He is not the person about whom the ironmaster is guessing. Now at this time, the ironmaster threatened this tramp to call the police. At that very moment, this tramp, he say a bit of things. He say that this is nothing, just a rat trap. All the good things that were offered to him were nothing but just like cheese and bits of pork, set out to drag a poor fellow into trouble. The sheriff may lock him up for this. He warned the ironmaster that a day will come when he will also be entrapped and no one will escape him. Now this man is saying that since this is his day to be entrapped, a day will come on which the ironmaster will also be entrapped and there will be no one to save him. The ironmaster began to laugh. He dropped the idea of informing the sheriff. However, he asked the tramp to leave and opened the door. Just then, his daughter Edla Wilmanson, she asked her father to stop him. She resisted her father and she said that whom we have invited in our house, whom we have insisted to come into our house, how we can reject him and let him go on a Christmas Eve. Moreover, he spoke in the favor of Tramp, saying that this Tramp who always moved to and fro, who always wandered in many places, at least he need a day to rest. At least he need a day to be comfortable. At least he need a day so that he can relax. So she take the favor of this peddler because she had sympathy on him, because she had compassion on him. But the father, the ironmaster, he seems to be adamant and reluctant. However, the ironmaster yielded to the request of Edla Wilmanson and let him dwell in the house just for that Christmas Eve. And he asked his daughter that for your sake, I let this man dwell in this house just for the Christmas Eve. And after the Christmas Eve is over, this man should go from this house. And this was how that man, the tramp, the peddler, or the vagabond was kept in the house for the Christmas Eve. Edla Wilmanson led him to the table and asked him to sit down. She served him food. At that moment, this stranger, he was surprised. He was wondered why Edla Wilmanson, she is doing such a favor upon a stranger. He could not understand why she had been so nice and kind-hearted towards him. Then after the stranger went to sleep, in the evening, in the Christmas evening, he was awakened by Edla and asked to have the meal again. The Christmas fish and porridge was served to him. After getting up from the table, he went around and said thank you and good night to everyone present. Now this is it. This happened in the eve of Christmas. He was served fish and porridge. After eating that porridge, he gets up from the table and then he is ready to go for sleep. Before going to sleep, he say goodbye to everyone who were present there. The girl told him that the suit he wore was to be a Christmas present and he did not have to return it. Now the girl, the daughter of ironmaster, she had given him a coat, a suit, and that is the present of Christmas. That is a gift of Christmas to this peddler, to this tramp, and he does not need to return it. If he wanted to spend one more Christmas Eve, the next Christmas Eve, he can come back again here. This is the invitation extended by Edla Wilmanson to this stranger, to this tramp, to this peddler, that if he want to spend the next Christmas time with them, he is free to come back again the next year. The man with the rat traps did not answer. The peddler did not spoke a word. He only stared at the young girl in limitless amazement. He did not utter a word. The next morning, the ironmaster and his daughter got up early and went to the Christmas service. They went to the Christmas service at the church. They drove back at about 10 o'clock. They came back at 10 o'clock. The young girl sat and hung her head even more dejectedly than usual. As they came into their house, this young girl was very disappointed, distressed. At the church, she came to know that an old crofter of the ironworks had been robbed by a man who went around selling rat traps. This was discovered when she had gone to the church, that a crofter has been robbed by a rat trap seller. Now she realized that the same person whom she had invited in her house to spend the Christmas evening was the rat trap seller. The ironmaster, afraid that the man might have stolen many silver spoons from the cupboard. As the wagon stopped at the front steps, the ironmaster asked the servants about the stranger. The servants told that the stranger had left and he had not taken anything from his house, but he left a package for Miss Edla Wilmanson as a Christmas present. Now this is a very startling thing that was told by the servant, that the stranger left the home without taking anything with him. Moreover, he left a present to Edla Wilmanson. On opening the package, she gave a little cry of joy. She found a small rat trap, and in it there were 3 kroner notes. There was also a letter addressed to her. He did not want her to be embarrassed by a thief, but act as a captain, especially on the eve of Christmas. He requested her to return the money to that old crofter on the roadside, who had money pouch hanging on the window frame as a bait for the poor wanderer. The rat trap was a Christmas present from a rat who would have been caught in this world's rat trap if he had not been raised to the position of a captain, because in that way he got power to clear himself. This was the note, this was the letter that was left by the peddler, in which he says that he don't want Edla Wilmanson to be embarrassed for her kindness, for her help, for her sympathy, for her concern. He did not want her to be embarrassed by a thief. Now this thief, this peddler, got a chance to correct his mistake, and he used that chance. Even in fact, indeed to correct his mistake. He left that 30 kroners inside that rat trap and asked Edla Wilmanson to return those money, to return that kroners to the crofter whom he had robbed. Now, moreover, he says that the crofter who hung the leather bag on the window frame, it was just like a bait for the poor wanderers. That means the crofter had to keep that bag somewhere else where it could not be seen by anyone. When it is not seen by anyone, it will not act like a bait. It will not tempt others to steal that bag or money. Then he put a signature in the name of Captain Von Stale. Now, how he got the chance to correct his mistake? It was due to the kind-heartedness of Edla Wilmanson, sympathy of Edla Wilmanson, soft corner in the heart of Edla Wilmanson converted this criminal and made him to amend his ways, amend his mistake, amend his crime, because he was raised to the level of a captain. So, standing in that level, he corrected his mistake, and thus he was able to escape from the rat trap that is the world. And this is how human values like honesty, integrity, loyalty, faithfulness that was within him, hidden, they were raised by the goodness of Edla Wilmanson. This is the essence of this chapter, that human values can be awakened by the goodness of others.